Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken?
Hey, Kiernan.
Oh my gosh, Ryan, it's been so long since I've seen your face.
I know. You were so sunburned. You've been traveling the whole Pacific Northwest.
I think what you may be seeing is that I'm sweating profusely because the central air does not work in my new house. And so what you perceive as red is actually just the glisten from every liquid in my body leaking through my face.
Very attractive. We should do a screenshot so I can send people because it's more than that. It's also that you're covered in a blanket.
Well, I'm also in a bit of a tent city because I need to contain the echoiness of an empty room where I just got to get some couches. Things are going to go well, but you may also be seeing some genuine sunburn before I have been outside for basically 2 weeks straight.
That sounds horrifying. I'm glad you're back inside.
Well, today we're going to talk all about it. We're going to talk about 3 great national parks from the Pacific Northwest, because that's where I was from. Regular listeners will know we talked about when I was about to leave. You got 2 fresh new episodes while I was away, and now we're back.
Hot episodes.
Well, I just definitely want to thank Chase Whiteside for stepping in. That he got that great documentary.
Did you notice him bragging about how good his Spanish is, just in the way that he spoke it?
I mean, I noticed that he overpronounced every word.
Yeah. He's like Antonio Banderas and,
Absolutely. And then he tried to suggest that only our families listen to the podcast.
Right.
Folks, we see the downloads. We both come from big Irish families, but not this big.
We have a global audience. I mean, at this point, pretty much every country, I think, has reached out and had an out-of-office experience with us.
I'm not 100% sure that we have any Russian listeners, and that's a big market.
I for sure know that we have Russian listeners because when you go to the stats and you hover over Russia, which is a huge country, it does show a little. It's got not many. I don't think we have a huge Russian audience, but maybe we'll do an episode on the best places to get borscht in Moscow. And that will just skyrocket us up in the Russian.
It'll be
charts.
Our borscht episode yet. Now, right, that actually reminds us. We see the download numbers. Then you go to iTunes, you look at our reviews. We've got great reviews through the roof. We've got more than most travel podcasts. Mostly 5 stars. We've corrected the 4-star mishap, but a lot of people are coming back week after week. They are not taking the time to go to iTunes and give us those 5 stars.
So go to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Give us those 5 stars because unless we make this a true crime podcast, unless we make it about the Manson family, we need your help to get it out there.
And if I have to murder Ryan, I will live on air.
Although true crime places to visit might be a good episode for us.
That's not a bad episode. Write that down in the book.
So I know that you have been on the road and we have a lot to talk about. So we should not be diddly-daddling here in the beginning of the show.
No, I definitely don't want to diddly-daddle.
Yeah, I think we need to jump right in. I think it's already time to take off.
Yeah, we're going to take off. We're going to visit Mount Rainier National Park, Crater Lake National Park, and Olympic National Park. So that plane better be fueled up.
Yeah, because we are going out there to the Pacific Northwest.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right, Ryan. Well, as you mentioned, I went to the Pacific Northwest, and that's where we're going to primarily be talking about. We're going to talk about 3 national parks, all in Washington or Oregon, and it's first Mount Rainier National Park, followed by Crater Lake National Park, followed by Olympic National Park. Super different parks. Each of them I'm going to give kind of a what to expect there, a recommendation of what you should do. And then most of them have kind of an interesting fun fact or two that I think it'd be fun to discuss with you.
Great. Well, I'm excited to hear about your trip. We have actually not even talked in real life, so I will be hearing about this live.
No, I kept texting you and you just weren't responding. So it turns out when we don't have the podcast forcing us to talk, it's as if I don't exist.
Because I knew it would be fresher if we're having the conversation.
Oh, is that the reason?
Yeah, of course.
Now, Ryan, one thing that I think is really interesting about the Washington, Oregon area is that the whole thing is actually a super volcanic area. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but that makes sense. It's because Mount St. Helens is over there, right?
Yeah, that's right. You drive by Mount St. Helens on your way to these parks, and Mount St. Helens actually is a national monument. I regret to say that I did not have time to stop there.
Reason to go back.
Reason to go back. Catherine Classic. Reason to go back. Very good. And I actually knew this was a volcanic area because a couple years ago, the New Yorker had a great article called "The Really Big One," and it was all about how. Oh, Ryan.
Sorry.
It was talking about
it's
how
Pride Month, folks.
There's a huge fault line that is just along these Pacific Northwestern states. You know, we all think of the San Andreas fault line down in California. As it turns out, there's also a giant fault line just underneath this area. It's called Cascadia, the Cascadia Subduction Zone. And as that
Subduction zone.
Yeah, as that suggests, two tectonic plates are coming together and one is subducting below the other.
Oh,
and so the reason the
okay.
title is called The Really Big One is not because of where your dirty mind went. It's because we can expect that there will be a major earthquake off the coast of Seattle, of Portland, of all these major cities. And that means that it's probably going to trigger a tsunami. And there are going to be, seismic events that could bring some devastation to this area.
And is this a once in 1,000 years, once in 10,000 years? Like what are the stats? I don't want to go out. I don't want to recommend our listeners go out there if it's, impending doom.
Well, Ryan, the piece doesn't say exactly what percentage we should expect it. But what it says is that other subduction zones that are like the one near Washington and Oregon can be expected to cause major earthquakes, magnitude 5, magnitude 4. But, I should say it the other way, magnitude 4, magnitude 5. We're talking big whoppers. And that this zone has never caused a major earthquake that we know of.
Oh, so that means it's coming.
Exactly. We should expect that it someday will. And I will say, as you drive along the coast in Oregon, you have a lot of signage that you are entering or exiting tsunami evacuation areas. And it's because they know that someday this will happen.
Well, I mean, it feels like with the way that the world's going now, it's just a matter of time.
And and so just as the subduction zone is called Cascadia, the major mountain range out in that area is called the Cascades. And there is a national park that we're not including today. I also didn't have time to get up to. It borders Canada, and that's North Cascades.
So both Cascadia and Subduction Zone, I think, sound like fantastic band names. So I feel like out there...
That's such a Dave Barry joke. I'm cutting that.
No.
It's overused.
You're out there in the Pacific Northwest. You're in the land of music, Seattle, Portland. I feel like there must be a Subduction Zone band out there.
All right, thanks for that. The reason that it's relevant that this is a volcanic area is because each of the places I'm going to talk about owe their interesting topography to the fact that they are formed by volcanoes. So the first national park is called Mount Rainier, and it's pronounced Rainier, but it's spelled Rainier. So it's Rainier, Mount Rainier. And it stands at a whopping 14,411 feet elevation, but it's only 2 hours outside of Seattle. So it's super reachable from a major metropolitan area. So if you fly into Seattle, you grab a car, you drive out there, you can be out in the park really fast.
So is that what you did? You all flew into Seattle?
Yeah, we all did. I brought the whole family, packed us all up in a station wagon. And what's interesting about Rainier is that it's actually, it was the 5th national park ever created. 1899 it was created. It even predates TR in office. And so Mount Rainier itself looks like your typical mountain. It's snow-covered at the top. It's looming. And where you can mostly hike and stay, you can look up on it. People do climb it, but you need to be a serious climber in order to accomplish that. But it is also an active volcano. And that's what I find so interesting here is it's not, when I think active volcano, I think kind of steam coming out the top. I think, lava boiling away. But even when it looks dormant, even when it's covered in ice, this thing could blow, just like Mount St. Helens did.
But you get a little time before that happens, right? Like, there are people watching and, monitoring that. Because I remember a few years ago, There was all this talk about the volcano near Old Faithful going off, and that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, that's right. Usually there are sort of telltale tremors in the earth that seismographs will pick up. And you're right to say that, there's no indication that the eruption is imminent. Its last eruption, though, 1894, not that long ago.
Well, after that happened, they were like, we better make this a national park if this is going to just keep erupting.
Yeah. And what I actually learned a really interesting geological term while I was there that I thought I would share with you. The reason that they feel that Mount Rainier it would be a danger is not just the sort of the ash and explosion that would come from the top of the mountain, but it would cause something called a lahar. Have you ever heard of a lahar? Lahar.
I don't believe that I have.
So what it basically is a super violent mud flow caused by water, rocky debris, kind of a slurry that would form that would gain momentum and cause not just a mudslide, but almost like as if liquid concrete were being poured down on towns, cities, cars. And so these huge flows could fill up your house in just a matter of a minute.
And this would happen if the volcano erupted?
Exactly. So
you would be dealing with mud and molten lava at the same time? I mean, this seems like a terrible combination.
Well, they expect that the amount of material that would explode out of this mountain, that the force of the eruption would cause a gathering of this material. And of course, it gains force as it goes down this steep mountain.
Sure.
And there are towns and cities that are not that far outside of the national park that are in this lahar mud flow zone.
So this is something they're familiar with this term as it's something they learn.
Yeah, they we got fire detectors. Yeah. They have lahar detectors.
Little Billy, one day the mountain over there will just rain mud upon us.
So you better be good.
That's called a lahar mud flow.
I wasn't too nervous while I was there. As you said, I was expecting that we'd probably get an alert should anything be happening. And folks, I'm not saying these things are imminent, but I think it's interesting that we all gain comfort thinking these natural disasters are very far off, that we never have to think about them. But I actually think in our lifetime, Ryan, we will see some geological event at one of these parks that I'm talking about today.
Well, mark your words, Kiernan. We're going to have to do a recalculating, and in 50 years, we're going to be like, wait a minute, whatever happened to that Mount Rainier?
Hello, Ryan's corpse that I still prop up in front of a microphone and talk at every week?
It'll be my AI, the projection of myself that will continue this podcast forever.
Your head in a jar of formaldehyde with a robot that we've programmed with your personality.
Well, might be more engaging.
And what's amazing about this mountain too is that you can stay at a high elevation, and it's cold. It was still covered in snow there. There weren't trails cleared off that we could do at the top of the mountain. But as you descend the mountain on this major road in Mount Rainier, you actually get to a huge old growth forest. So giant trees, Douglas firs, red cedars, western hemlock. And I will say, as we were driving in, the only comparison that came to my mind was the fourth moon of Endor in Return of the Jedi, where the Ewoks live. You've got the speeder bikes racing through. Ryan, you're looking around like you don't know what I'm talking about. But all my Star Wars fan friends out there absolutely know what I'm talking about. It looks like how you picture these old forests where the sun doesn't reach the ground.
I actually think that they shot a scene in whatever the really bad Star Wars movie was. I mean, I know there's been a lot of them with the Jar Jar Binks. That scene was shot. Those are all Douglas firs, if I am remembering correctly.
Well, I'll tell you what. We will do a recalculating on it because I know you didn't bother to research that before you brought it up. And so you get lots of great, very long hikes. There's one hike in particular I would recommend. If you only have a day at Mount Rainier, I would say make your way to what they call the Grove of the Patriarchs. And the reason they call it the Grove of the Patriarchs, personally, I find it a little gender normative to call it that. It's not Grove of the Matriarchs, but it probably should be. And there are these grand old trees that live on this island in a river, and were protected from forest fires, from deforestation, and have just grown to enormous heights and widths because they've been protected for thousands of years.
That's incredible. I don't think I have not spent that much time around in forests that are that old and have that sort of like extraordinary history.
Well, that's it. I was expecting, I haven't been to redwoods yet. I haven't been to sycamore yet, but these national parks are the ones I think of as, kind of giant old trees. This delivered exactly that same promise. And again, only 2 hours outside of Seattle. And Ryan, I think I'm a huge fan of national park lodges.
Yes, you've spoken about national park lodges more than once.
And it's many of them were built in the early 1900s. They have kind of that cool Swiss chalet kind of feel, kind of exposed logs and highly slanted roofs so that snow can come down them. I love grabbing a beer, sitting in front of these giant fireplaces, especially in a place where it's cold enough to have a roaring fire in the middle of June, which is what was happening while I was there.
Are these run by like public-private partnerships, or these operate like who operates these park lodges?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's actually something that I want to talk about on a future episode. But the short answer is it's different park to park. Sometimes the national park owns the hotel, but service and food are run by an outside vendor. But yeah, the basic model is a private-public partnership. So once you go through procurement with the government, you get awarded running the services or actually building the hotel and running the full lodging experience inside a national park. So it's actually quite a bit of a monopoly.
Yeah, I would imagine. But it's fascinating that those sort of connections even exist.
And
it's like, imagine going to like Ulysses S. Grant's tomb and being able to order a cocktail. I mean, it would be great.
That sounds great and very fitting. Very fitting.
Would be very fitting.
And there are two great there are two great national park lodges in this hotel. One's called the National Park Inn. That's actually the older of the two, 1906. But the one I stayed in is the one that I would recommend. It's called Paradise Inn. And from right by Paradise Inn, you've got a great view of the mountain. You're on the southern slope of the mountain, but you can still see the top of Mount Rainier. And built in 1916. It's limited in when it's open because, from basically May to mid-fall is when you can actually get up to the top. Otherwise, the snow is too great, and they've got all this wonderful photography from the teens, the 20s, the 30s of when they got up to, they kind of dug out the old hotel at the end of May, and they literally had to create almost like an igloo entrance into the hotel because it was still completely covered in snow.
That sounds beautiful.
It really, and it's one of the few places that I can think that I've been to where the internet actually doesn't work. So it was wonderful to have my texts ignored, but then I could tell myself, Ryan's just not getting them right now. That's why.
I don't think I got that many texts from you that I ignored. You always text me like late at night when I'm asleep. So,
and that I love kind of historical oddities. And the oddity that they have at Paradise Inn is they use trees that had naturally died at the top of this slope. They cut them down, and that's what they built the lodge out of. And they had some left over, and this German-born carpenter, whose name I hope I'm pronouncing correctly is Han Franke, actually created custom furniture from these local materials, including two 1,500-pound tables made out of these giant trees that I'm describing, as well as a 14-foot-tall grandfather clock. But most importantly, Ryan, this carpenter carved a rustic piano that sits in the lobby of the lodge and was played by none other than President Harry S. Truman, who visited the lodge in 1945.
I mean, who knew that Truman could even play the piano? I mean, he's a regular Peter Buttigieg,
Who calls him Peter? Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, I call him Peter.
Peter. And actually, they hire somebody to tickle the ivories every night on that extremely well preserved piano. So it's just a lovely place to stay.
Did you get to do some singing around the piano? Did you do little guys and dolls?
Well, it's funny you say that. Well, first of all, I'm not going to sing because that Broadway show is still our worst performing episode.
I don't know. Passports 2 is coming pretty close.
Passports 102 was a star. It's because you were pissy that day. I cut those parts out, folks, but he was very pissy that day. I was disappointed. I was hoping that they would play sort of the Great American Songbook and Broadway. But instead, it was kind of this young kid, and he kept playing Shallow. So Catherine and I were quietly singing to ourselves in the corner. But
that's a great song. Shallow's a great song.
But most national park guests in these lodges are of an age where they are not singing Shallow, and many don't have the chops of a Lady Gaga.
I feel like that kid was trolling everyone at the national park that day.
He was very good. I just wish I had some money to tip him. Sorry about that. I think I actually might have tipped him. Did I tip him? Oh, no, I talked about tipping him because I said to Catherine, do you think he'd play Guys and Dolls if I tipped him?
He'd be like, Guys and what?
I did, yeah. I should have said, do you know the Out of Office theme song?
So when you're speaking about Star Wars and Douglas firs, this made me think, wasn't there a connection between the two of those things? And of course, Googling really quickly, I did notice that the Return of the Jedi, that famous scene where they're sort of flying, I don't know whether they're space copters or what do you call those things that they're flying on?
I'm not sure which vehicle you're describing.
They're flying through this massive forest
on speeder bikes.
Is that a thing?
They're on speeder bikes.
I don't know anything about
they're
hobbits.
on speeder bikes.
Okay, so the hobbits are on the speeder bikes.
No, that's not funny. That's not funny. It is not hobbits. They're not hobbits in the Star Wars universe. You had Leia on a speeder bike. You had stormtroopers on a speeder bike. Go ahead. So
this was actually filmed near the Pacific Northwest. In British Columbia at Cathedral Grove.
Yeah, the landscape that you would find at Mount Rainier very similar to that.
Yeah. So that's what made me think of it, and it makes sense you bring up Star Wars so often, especially.
And what planet were they on?
In the United States or British Columbia. Canada?
No. What planet were the characters within Star Wars on?
Are there multiple planets? I guess there are. Mars? I don't know. I don't know this unit. I don't watch comic book films. So.
Well, Ryan, another place that feels otherworldly, out of this world, but it was not featured in Star Wars, but surely could have been, is Crater Lake National Park. Have you ever heard of Crater Lake?
I have heard of Crater Lake. Yes, I have.
Well, Mount Rainier, of course, was the 5th national park, the one we were just talking about. This was the 6th national park, and luckily came to be under our greatest president, Theodore Roosevelt.
Are you going to all the parks in order? Is this one of your things?
No, it's not. It just happens to be.
Okay.
No. I group them together by location. But Crater Lake is so named because you're basically going to admire a giant crater that contains a very deep lake.
It's appropriately named.
Absolutely. And in fact, it is the deepest lake in North America. It's just shy of 2,000 feet.
That is a pretty deep lake.
It's a significant drive south from Mount Rainier, but you could certainly do it in a day. And it, too, is in this extremely active volcanic area. And the lake itself actually sits in what is called a caldera, another great geological term. Do you know what that one is?
I don't know.
So a caldera is a crater that forms when after a volcano blows, it then collapses in on itself.
That is awesome. Scary, but one less volcano to worry about.
So what is today Crater Lake used to be what they call Mount Mazama, Mazama, and basically 7,700 years ago, Mount Mazama blew its top, an enormous eruption, and as it exploded, on one of its side, a fissure opened up, and that crack started to spread in a circular formation all around the middle of the mountain.
Right.
And at that point, the mountain actually fell dramatically down. Boom. Entire mountain peak gone. Falls into the magma chamber on which it sat for thousands of years. So it went from mountain to crater in the course of 2 to 3 hours.
That must have been an incredible thing to witness. It's a shame there are no sort of Instagram stories of this happening. I'd love to see what this looks like.
I've actually been, because it is one of the most Instagrammable national parks out there, because the lake is absolutely pristine and gorgeous.
I love it.
But it's interesting you say that because, believe it or not, it happened 7,700 years ago, but there are actually Native American oral tradition tales that have persisted all of those years that actually map on to how geologists say this eruption happened. So while, it has, of course, the sort of painting of lore, and it passed from mouth to mouth for thousands of years. They feel that Native Americans were actually there to witness this extraordinary event.
That's fantastic. Can you imagine witnessing that and then going about your day? Like when you just think the whole world was ending around you?
Yeah, which I actually currently feel right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way when the L train stopped running. So I can't imagine if you saw a volcano collapse into a crater, how that would, affect the rest of your afternoon.
Now, what's special about Crater Lake is, usually if you were heading out to a national park, I would tell you should try to carve out 2, 3, 4 days to try to see everything there is to see there. But the truth is, Crater Lake is one of these places where I actually think you could drive there, and in 2 to 3 hours, you could really see the gem of the park, because the gem is the lake itself. It's 5 to 6 miles across, depending on where you're looking. And it receives a tremendous amount of snow throughout the year. It actually receives a whopping 43 feet of snow a year. So while we were there, there's a road that you can drive completely around the rim of this crater. And still in early June, it was not completely dug out. Often you can only drive it mid-July to August.
So how close can you get to the crater with your car? That seems like an accident waiting to happen.
You can drive around it and go to these scenic pull-offs.
Overlooks, okay.
And you basically are 1,000 feet above the lake shore.
So this is a pretty wide crater.
It's absolutely huge, and the water is shockingly blue, so deeply blue. I don't think it's hard to find something to compare it to, and that's because all of the water that's collected into it comes from the snow and rain that you experience at the top of this, quite elevated lake. And it maintains a steady water level, or fairly steady, because as it receives water, a similar amount seeps out at the bottom. And so it actually maintains and gets refreshed to keep this pristine, clean, clear water. It's one of the cleanest, clearest lakes in the world.
The water seeps out at a rate of 2 million gallons an hour? How is that even possible?
2 million gallons of water an hour is lost through the body of the crater. And what's amazing is there's no river in or out feeding this lake. And so for years, it's been rainfall. This geological mystery as to where all that water's going. And the truth is, they're still trying to figure that out. They're still trying to account for that much water, but they know, based on the precipitation that they receive and the level that the lake stays at, that they know for a fact that it is seeping massive amounts of water out. So where it's going in the earth, what it's actually feeding that we can't see as a direct offshoot, is work for a geology PhD to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's something down there just feeding off that water every day, growing stronger at every moment.
Honestly, I could probably drink that amount of water right now as my studio quickly surpasses the 110-degree mark. But one more interesting fact about it is that in the middle of the lake, and I'll be posting some great photos.
This is going to be a great Instagram episode, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Better than the passport episode.
And the handle, of course. Oh, wait until, how about the Chase Whiteside episode where it's just pictures of Chase on a plane? And of course, our handle at OOO Podcast. That's at OOO Podcast. And and it's not exactly in the middle, but in Crater Lake, there is actually a what looks like a mini volcano all its own, even with its own little divot at the top, just as you think of it. And it's called Wizard Island.
Yeah, and so you were laughing at my reference to the thing below. I mean, there's something magical going on here, Wizard Island.
Well, there's certainly something magical and breathtaking while you're there. And what's very funny is that it is called Wizard Island. Crater Lake was actually protected because of the efforts of a journalist named William Gladstone Steele in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And he actually called the lake Witch's Cauldron, and then he named it Wizard's Island to be kind of cute. And then they renamed it Crater Lake, but they kept the Wizard Island title.
I can see why they didn't want to keep it Witch's Cauldron. That seems a little much.
Yeah, totally agreed. And it doesn't. I feel like if it bubbled and boiled, then maybe it could be Witch's Cauldron. But it's not exactly a cauldron looking, I would say. It looks very friendly.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's beautiful.
And you can actually...
Can you get to this island somehow?
Yes, you can. During the summer months, they run a boat tour out to that island. However, I will say I quite enjoyed visiting at a time of year before the boat tour went, because then the lake was totally pristine, no boats or anything out on it. So you could just see a perfect view.
It says here that you have to be prepared to spend your entire day on the island because boats might be full taking you back.
Yeah, no, you're really committing. And also, there's like not that much to see on this island.
I imagine that it's relative. I mean, there isn't even like a TGI Fridays. I mean, I imagine it's pretty limited.
No, I think if you're heading there, you can keep this to the rim.
Yeah, although there are some hiking trails apparently in Wizard Island, so I think it sounds exciting.
No, there are hiking trails, but trust me, they don't look that worth it to me. I would recommend, unless you're really into seeing a classic volcanic cinder cone close up, I think you can skip the trip to Wizard Island. But I didn't do it, so I welcome a listener writing us and letting me know I'm wrong.
And there's another cone called Miriam Cone, which is also in the lake.
Yep, and that is completely below the waterline, so you can't observe that. But if you were to scuba dive, you could come across it.
Do folks go scuba diving there?
Well, Ryan, from what I can tell, it is not officially allowed, but you can certainly find some folks. They are allowed to swim in it, and you can certainly find some folks who have apparently gone in a wetsuit pretending to swim and who have successfully scuba dived. Yeah, and of course, scientists are allowed to go under and observe these things.
And apparently it's very, very cold.
It is. It's extremely cold, yes. Even they said in the hottest summer days, which are very hot there, it is still very cold.
Well, I think if I'm going, I'm going to swim over there to Wizard Island and do my little hike, and then
you're going to scuba over.
Yeah.
And if you go, there's a great lodge there as well, Crater Lake Lodge, built in 1915. It's got an amazing porch view out onto the lake, so you could have a drink out there, have tea. It's actually quite a luxury experience. I was a little disappointed to see that they have a gas fireplace, which I feel has no place in a historic national park lodge. And I was incredibly disappointed and turned off by that. Plus, it books very far out. Like you've got to book about a year in advance to stay at this lodge.
So you didn't stay there?
I was not able to stay there. I stayed in an Airbnb just down the mountain. But once I saw that gas fireplace, I said, you know what? I don't want these folks to have my money. Very
interesting to me that after these national parks are established so quickly, there's a hotel there. I don't know why Donald Trump hasn't started 40 national parks just to build, a bunch of Trump-themed
Trump
lodges.
Lodge. Yeah.
Oof. They would use at least many gas stoves, He loves gas. I don't know. Does he?
Oh, yeah, that's true. He loves gas and oil. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally coal-powered. On-site coal powering. These are parks set aside for the recreation and enjoyment of the people. I'm mostly happy that they have not torn down these lodges and replaced them with kind of soulless, Holiday Inn sort of things, that they preserve them. Many of them are national historic sites that themselves. And part of the joy of escaping into these parks is staying at these lodges. It's something I look forward to. I love going out, exhausting myself during the day, and then putting my head to rest in a lodge.
I think that if I were to do one of these national park experiences, I would most definitely want to plan to try to stay at the lodge. It does sound like you really get to immerse yourself in the park.
Yeah, and Ryan, I've got two more lodges to talk about in our final park of today. So we've talked Mount Rainier, we have talked Crater Lake, and now we are talking the final destination I visited, Olympic National Park. And Olympic National Park exists on a peninsula that's west of Seattle. So if you know Seattle, it has this beautiful harbor. You know that you can take ferries out to the San Juan Islands, and you can also take a ferry over to this peninsula where sits Olympic National Park. And Ryan, do you have any guess why Olympic National Park would be called Olympic National Park?
It's something about like Mount Olympus.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh my gosh, I'm
because
so good.
The highest mountain that exists and is protected within this park, in this range, is Mount Olympus.
Yeah, I didn't even know Mount Olympus was in the United States. So
no, well, it was a very uncreative British explorer who got out there and he called it Mount Olympus. And so it's become Olympic National Park. And happily, it is the tale of not one, but two Roosevelts. TR made this area the Mount Olympus National Monument, and that was in 1909. And then in 1938, FDR actually made it a protected national park, not just a national monument. And FDR actually visited the park. So there are great there are great accounts of him visiting the very lodges that you could stay at today. What's very cool about Olympic National Park is that in very short order, you can actually see 3 super, super different ecosystems. And that's because of the variety of elevations and temperatures that this park encompasses. So first, you can get the Pacific coastline. And that's sort of this rugged beach coastline. I feel like growing up in the Northeast, we're used to kind of beachy towns.
Well, growing up, in Ocean City, Maryland, on the Eastern Shore, I think of coastlines as basically, not rugged or jagged, like things you can actually walk to and walk on beaches, and there's boardwalks. So
and like pretty populated and beach towns. And same thing. And that's why it's incredible to see these coastlines that have been protected now for over 100 years and just perfectly preserved. And so one fun thing that you can do is at low tide, you can go see these tide pools that form where it's an area where ocean water sweeps in and it sweeps out. And you can look at tube worms and sponges and starfish and snails and barnacles, and it's super fun. And in fact, the park even allows you to like reach in and poke at these creatures, just like when you go to an aquarium and they let you kind of explore some of these things. There are rules that you're not supposed to like yank a starfish out if it didn't want to be yanked, but who doesn't want to be yanked?
And you can't just take a bunch of the snails and the mussels and then go back to your hotel and just boil them up or anything.
No, you're not meant. No, you're not meant to escargot with them. That's not a good joke. And then as you go further into the park, you can also see, and actually this interestingly is a park that has 2 non-contiguous areas. So it protects a place all along the coastline, a long stretch of the coastline. But then you can go in to the second ecosystem that you can see, which is actually a rainforest.
A rainforest in North America?
Yeah, it's basically there's this mountain range, this Olympic mountain range. And on the west side of that range, it faces the ocean, and it gets so much precipitation a year, 150 inches of annual precipitation, that you again get these giant old trees, and it's misty and it's moist, and you got to pack your rain gear if you're going to hike there. And you get very interesting trees because while many rainforests are deciduous trees, these are actually coniferous trees. And so you have a rainforest of spruce and hemlock and again, Douglas firs, cedars, and many of them are completely coated in thick, heavy green moss.
Wow. I feel like I've seen pictures from this, but it's super unusual. You don't think of those trees as surviving with this amount of precipitation. This is unusual.
No, it's exactly right. And you're right that you've seen pictures about it. It's often featured on the national park Instagram accounts, the primary ones, because it's so green and beautiful. I mean, every shade of green you can think of is represented in these forests. And actually, there's a very interesting phenomenon when you're in this rainforest, which is that many of these trees will grow for hundreds, even thousands of years. And then when they tip over and die, they actually get quite well preserved. And you can see other trees take root in their decaying body. And they basically become what are referred to as nurse logs.
Nurse logs.
And so you see these nurse logs that are slowly disintegrating, again, over decades. But you will come across a line of trees that have grown completely naturally. A human hand has not planted these trees, but they will be in a perfectly straight line. And the reason is because they all took root in a log that fell, and then they fed off it, and they naturally grew in a straight line. How often do you find a straight line in nature?
That is awesome. I'm looking at some pictures of nurse logs, and I'm familiar with this concept. I didn't know what the term was though, but I have seen these before. Gorgeous.
And then the final, absolutely, completely beautiful and fascinating to learn about.
It looks like a lot of places that elves and stuff could hide in. You can make a home in.
I'm telling you, Ryan, the Pacific Northwest speaks to some part of me that loves all of that weird fantasy sci-fi stuff. So this
is why he really likes national parks. We've gotten to so he can feel like he's in the Star Wars universe.
And I wear my armor while I'm hiking.
Walking with your lightsaber, just pretending that you're young Luke Skywalker.
Well, I would never be old Luke Skywalker. He turned his back on the Force.
I believe you.
And then finally, Ryan, the last ecosystem that you can really dig into and explore are the mountains themselves. So you can drive high up into these peaks. You can look off on Mount Olympus, which has beautiful glaciers on it. Though, of course, like most glaciers, they are shrinking these days. So I encourage you to go and see them while they're still there. And you also have beautiful mountain lakes. And so there are two lodges, Lake Quinault and Lake Crescent lodges, both of which sit on these gorgeous lakes with sort of mountains framing them in the background and create, wonderful Instagrams and really relaxing recreation. So Catherine and I stayed first at Lake Quinault Lodge, built in 1926. They've got hummingbird feeders out, so you get those coming right up to the windows. What I really love is they still have kind of old stenciling that was put in when the place was originally built. So you've got these like fun fading paintings. They've just kind of let them go to seed. And they have on their stone fireplace a rain tracker. And it almost looks like a totem pole that they've created. And they track how many inches of rain they've received that time each year.
So so the last national park you were in, you were there for you could be there for 4 hours. This is over 1 million. Am I reading this correctly?
It's over 1 million acres.
So
that's exactly right. It's over 1 million acres. But what's interesting about the park is in Mount Rainier, I found we had lots of options for doing really long hikes. More than 10-mile hikes, be out there all day hiking. Olympic National Park has a number of roads around the perimeter of that 1 million acres, and so it's a huge it's a huge surrounding road that takes many hours to go, and some roads that lead into the interior, but really the majority of that 1 million acres is purely protected land. So you have to be a hardcore climber. You need to be a camper. You're not going to get deep into the interior of this humongous park.
Do you need special permission to do that? How do you say that is it like when you pretended to speak Polish or can you actually, you have to actually prove that you can do it?
No, you don't, it's not like they make you take a test, but you do have to apply for a permit and give a permit. But to be honest, the parks really trust that if you're taking these things upon yourself, they're not liable. And people die in the national parks every year because they take on dangerous tasks that they're not fit for. So no, the parks kind of leave it up to you individually. The permits are mostly to make sure that they keep track of people so they know if somebody hasn't come back when they left, and they ask that you check back in when you leave the park. And it's also to make sure that not too many people are coming out because they're sensitive to over-tourism. But yeah, you go, you apply for a permit, and if they haven't had the right number, they still have the permits, you go in.
And for all three of these national parks, did you have to get tickets early or can you show up and just go into them?
No, you could show up and go into them. Okay. Olympic National Park is quite a popular national park, so you would risk getting traffic there. But even Mount Rainier, Crater Lake, these are very popular during the summer season, July and August. Lots of family trips go through here. School trips go through here. Lots of family trips go through here. Summer camps go through here. So you're gonna hit traffic and people. But if you go in the off season, I mean, starting in the fall, and especially if you go in the winter to any of these places, if you love snowshoeing, you love cross country skiing, you can get a really isolated experience. And Catherine and I, going at the beginning of June, we beat that summer rush. So while not everything was open, we had a lot of it to ourselves, which was wonderful. And I want to give a plug to Lake Crescent Lodge, which, again, a historic lodge built in 1914 to 1915. But it sits on this gorgeous Lake Crescent, which Catherine and I kayaked in. But interestingly, Ryan, just as you were asking about scubaing, you can scuba in Lake Crescent. And they actually discovered down well preserved in the depths of Lake Crescent, a 1927 Chevy that ran off the road, killing both of the people inside, Blanche and Russell Warren. And it had been there since 1929. It took 75 years to solve where these two people disappeared to. And that's where it is, at the bottom of Lake Crescent. And you can still scuba there today.
And you can find their 1927 Chevy.
That's exactly right.
That is.
I mean, I understand driving your Chevy to the levee, but you got to keep it dry.
Too soon.
I don't know.
I apologize for any of the Warren family listening.
Oh, do you think Elizabeth Warren's related to them too?
Were they Native American?
Ryan. The last cool thing about Olympic Park that I want to talk about, Ryan, is you get great wildlife. You get bears. I saw a bear and backed slowly away. Saw a bear out in the wild, as well as a big pile of its droppings next to the path.
That's good.
You're such a city boy. I could see you made a grossed out face. Listen, you got to be ready for animal scat while you're out there. They're predators ready to eat you.
I think a bear that's got a functioning digestive system is better than a constipated bear. He'd be in a bad mood, So that makes me happy.
He'd be a real bear. And
wow.
Olympic National Park was almost called Elk National Park, and the reason is because they have this subspecies of elk that is actually called Roosevelt Elk, and they named it in honor of Theodore Roosevelt because by setting aside this national monument, he protected this endangered elk species, and so he got it named after him. He got to eat at least one of them before they named it after him. Well, that's his rule. If he's going to encounter any animal, he has to be allowed to eat, kill, debone, and eat at least one of them. And the Roosevelt elk actually at Lake Crescent, they have a Roosevelt elk head above their giant fireplace. Very impressive rack on them. You got those giant horns on top of their head. Mm-hmm. And not only do you get the Roosevelt elk, but you also get mountain goats in Olympic National Park. But I'll tell you what, it's not as happy as I was seeing mountain goats when I was in Glacier National Park.
They're not endangered, these mountain goats, I don't think, are they?
They're not only not endangered, they are proliferating to a troublesome degree. And they are not even naturally in this mountain range. They were introduced stupidly by hunters who put them in this in the Olympic mountains
as like bait or something.
They put 12 mountain goats out there so they could frickin' hunt them.
Right.
And today,
is that a thrilling thing to do to hunt a mountain goat? It doesn't seem like much of a challenge.
Honestly, I feel like a mountain. I've always said a mountain goat is my spirit animal. So it's either a mountain goat or a moose. And I would never kill a mountain goat. No. But there are over 700 today. And what's especially sad is they have grown so accustomed to human visitors that they have become addicted. This is crazy. They've become addicted to human urine. So when hikers are out there,
guys like that.
Ryan. This isn't exclusively a Hell's Kitchen podcast. We get downloads outside of Hell's Kitchen.
That's true. That's getting cut. Yeah.
No, I'm keeping it in. When hikers, need to relieve themselves off the trail, mountain goats can sense the salt that is left in the sweat and the urine, and they're attracted to it, and this brings them too close to humans. And in fact, there have been people gored to death. So the
mountain goats?
Yeah. They're dangerous. It's serious. They've got these serious horns, and they're not scared of humans anymore, and they want your sweat and urine.
But if one was coming at you, couldn't you just pee in a different direction, like pee off a cliff or something to get that mountain goat out of there? I'm just imagining a mountain goat just following a trail of urine.
Well, I'll tell you what. Whenever we get a national park ranger on here, we will keep that question.
These are important questions.
Absolutely, these are the questions the listeners are asking. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen the national park take on is that they actually airlift these mountain goats out of Olympic National Park and put them back in mountains where they are naturally from. They're trying to get rid of the mountain goats, but they don't want to kill them. And so they strap them to the bottom of helicopters. They put them on a ferry. They put them in a refrigerated truck that then drops them off at another protected mountain.
Why are they refrigerated?
Because the mountain goats like it cold. Why do you think it's refrigerated?
Because I don't know. I feel like the real solution here is for both those lodges to have like a nice goat special.
A goat steak.
A goat steak just for a few months, and you would fix. I mean, that's what TR's solution would be. Who are we kidding?
Absolutely. I totally agree. But Ryan, that brings us to the end of our walkthrough. I think a very thorough walkthrough of 3 of the great Pacific Northwest National Parks. Again, that's Mount Rainier, Crater Lake, and Olympic National Park. Going to be a great week on the Instagram. I'll be posting fantastic photos all week. So Ryan, unless you have any more questions, I think it's time for the last stop.
Before I have to go to the bathroom and this billy goat follows me, I'm gonna.
It's not a billy goat. It's a mountain goat.
I don't know
how
different they are. They seem similar. They're goats. Okay.
Well, we'll pee and we'll see if a billy goat comes.
All
over.
right. Well, it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan, we're in the last stop. My favorite segment, your favorite segment, the People's segment. It's the last segment every week where you and I each discuss one thing that we have seen, smelt, done, cooked, read about. maybe something somebody emailed us and alerted us to, listened to, something that inspired our wanderlust that week, that fed that spirit of travel, even when we can't be on the road traveling. So, Ryan, I got to ask you, what's your last stop this week?
So, we have long, big fan of Frida on the show here. And
Muy bueno.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And we have never known what Frida's voice sounded like. There's never been a recording discovered of her voice. She died in 1954 and just unearthed from the National Sound Library of Mexico. A researcher discovered an audio clip of Frida reading an essay about her husband called Portrait of Diego in this show that originally aired in 1955 after her death. So it's late in her life when she did this recording. And it is the first, and as far as we know, the only known voice recording of Frida. So I just want to play just a quick 10 or 20 second snippet of it so folks can hear her voice. So here's Frida.
Con su cabeza asiática, sobre la que nace un pelo oscuro, tan delgado y fino que parece flotar en el aire, es un niño grandote, inmenso, de cara amable y mirada triste.
Isn't that amazing?
I honestly, I'm shocked. I mean, to die in 1954, she was an artist and famous in her time.
Right.
I'm really surprised. I didn't know that we didn't know what her voice sounded like, but I'll tell you, I think it fits her.
Yeah, I think it fits her too. And she sounds so, I mean, I don't speak Spanish, as folks who listen to the pod clearly
we know that very well, yes.
But she sounds incredibly like sharp and fun, and it does sound like the voice that you would imagine. But yeah, I didn't know that we didn't know what her voice sounded like, but it makes sense. I mean, I've been to all these Frida-related things, and I've never, usually when you go to a museum, they make you sit there and watch the person, and they have these TVs, and you have to sit there and do that. Never done that with Frida because there's no before this. There's been no recording of her voice. So very, very cool. We will link in the show notes to the audio clip so folks can hear the full thing. And if you speak Spanish, it's a lovely essay about her husband Diego Rivera.
Yeah, very cool.
So, Kiernan, I hope that your last stop is not national park related.
No, I decided to give you a break. I knew, I was going to spare you, but don't worry, there are many.
Billy Goat Pea?
There are many last stops that are going to come from this wonderful trip. And in fact, when I say feed my wanderlust, I feel like my wanderlust is still just overflowing from this wonderful trip. But no, today, rather than the Pacific Northwest, I'm going to take us back to France. You and I have been closely following Notre Dame, and we have a wonderful episode back in the archives that folks can check out about the fire there. And we promised that we would continue to coverage on the resilience of Notre Dame, and I reported back when I saw it last month. And interestingly, they have held the first mass back in Notre Dame since the fire. And what I thought was especially interesting about this, as I was looking at the pictures and reading the articles about it, is that you have all of this major clergy who, usually look so serious in their vestments, and they have to celebrate with hard hats, white hard hats on, because they're still in this building that's potentially very fragile.
Yeah, do you think that Pope Francis blessed those hard hats before they put them on? They had the papal blessing?
Oh, I didn't think about that. I don't know. I'll try to unearth that fact. But it was presided over by the Archbishop of Paris, and it was live streamed. So we will absolutely link to that YouTube video for anyone who wants to sit back and enjoy an entire French Mass. And I'll tell you what's fun.
Who doesn't,
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what's interesting is that the camera pans over some of the destruction, some of the burnt wood and crumbled stone to bring us to the area where they actually do the Mass, which actually looks pretty well preserved, and you can still see a lot of the stained glass standing proud behind the pastor.
This is so on brand for you because my mom literally texted me a link to this article a few days ago, and she said, "Give this to Kiernan." And I was like, "Mom, Kiernan's already texted me about it 4 times, and he's in
and I haven't answered any one of them."
I barely answered my mom, so this be fair.
Judy, I'm right there with you, and I'll tell you, it is interesting. I do want to continue to keep track of Notre Dame. It gave me great hope for the restoration of this wonderful monument. And if nothing else, very interesting to get a peek inside because it's going to be a long time before we can see it again.
I think it's great that the French government did this to let people know that they are on it and that this will not be something that's forgotten. That we're gonna rebuild Notre Dame and we're gonna have access to it a bit while this process is happening. So I think that's great.
So Ryan, what are we talking about next week?
So next week is the week of July 4th, and you and I, less so with this president, but in general, we are big patriots.
I still believe in the American people.
I still believe in the American people too, and they have a chance to correct their mistakes as they've done in the past. And we are going to talk about some of our favorite patriotic sites. There are so many, we can't cover them all in one episode, but some of our favorite patriotic sites across this sea, from sea to shining sea, from sea to shining sea across this great country.
I mean, this land is your land. This land is my land. We're going to explore all across this great US of A with patriotic sites.
Well, until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
With seat taken.
Sea to shining sea. That's a tough one. That really is.
Ryan, it may not surprise you, I'm not going to be recommending Paul Revere's house.
Oh, leave Paul Revere's house alone. He did a lot for this country.
Hold on, I'm sweating so much. A mountain goat just came in.